And that might take me quite a bit of time because I do like to answer things at length. So you guys can always leave me questions in the there's a little ask a question tab down at the bottom. There's a poll too if you tune out and get a little bored. Today we're going to be talking a lot about world building stuff. So I got some excellent questions about that, and I was preparing this morning. Yes, I do prepare for these things. I was realizing I was going on at quite a bit of length. So I hope you guys are ready to talk about world building. The first question came in from Brian B. King, and Brian, nice to see you. I hope you're on right now. Nice to see you again. You had a couple good questions, but I'm only going to answer one of them because I don't want people to see how much you're my favorite. Brian says, it seems like world building encompasses everything in and about the story. Do you really focus on the world building when creating a story, or is it something you look at after you've put the story pieces together to see if it makes sense? So here's kind of a useful mental trick that I think I used for a couple decades before I heard it named, and that's called oh man, I totally just blanked. It's called Pyrrhonian skepticism, and that is you take a question and you assume that the conventional wisdom is exactly wrong, or you just turn it around and you ask the opposite. So let's take a second and do this with world building, and let's go. Okay, is this connected or unconnected? And the way you do this is be something like this, hey boss, I've got this amazing world that I've just made up, and there's like these super magicians who control the weather, and they're always fighting, and they send these super hurricanes against each other's cities, and so the cities have like developed these specialized sewers that flush and like sewers. Yeah. Just hang with me. So these sewers have this acid green sludge that, like, within minutes before the hurricane hits, it'll just completely clear out the sewers. And okay. So your main character is a super mage. Well, no. Okay, so he's a sewer technician. No, he's actually a baker. But he's during one of these wars. Well, no, it's actually during a time of peace. The whole thing is really a love story between him and his terrier, his magic terrier. No, just a regular old terrier. So I think you see kind of the problem. Like, if you're building something that's completely disconnected from your characters, like, why are you putting it there? It's sort of the it's the scene setting equivalent, I guess, of Chekhov's gun, which if you're not familiar, Chekhov said he was a playwright, and he said, if you see a rifle over the mantle in Act 1, then by Act 3 that rifle better be getting pulled down and shot at somebody. If you're creating things in fantasy, we get a lot of wiggle room, and readers give us a lot of space, but you want to be to make up stuff just because it's cool, and you need to be careful with that freedom that readers give you. If you're making something up, it should be for a reason, and maybe the reason should look like to us at the beginning that you're just making this up because it's cool and look at how different this world is and isn't this amazing. But really, as a writer, what you're doing is I am spending the pages on that, or even just the paragraphs on that, or even sentences here and there throughout 200 or 400 or 600 pages for a reason, and that's going to tie into something that's important. So I with Night Angel, one of the questions I was asking was, is it possible to be a moral assassin? Or if I'm going to make this character who is a moral assassin, how is it possible that he get there? How can that happen? And so the question is, how do you get a basically moral person to go into a completely immoral kind of job? And then what are the moral dilemmas that he faces as he does that? And my answer to that was, he has to be living in an incredibly corrupt and immoral world. And so if you had Kyler as an orphan, Azoth in a moral and sensible world with a good society, this kid would be taken off the street. He'd be put into a good orphanage. He'd get adopted by good parents, and there would be no story. So there has to be a feedback loop or it's efficient and it's good storytelling to have there be a feedback loop between what your character needs, what you're interested in talking about, and then what the world is that brings out those problems for the characters. In Lightbringer, I was considering problems of power and integrity and loyalty. So I take one character who has all the power in the world. He's got everything going for him that's possible. And then I take another character who has no power whatsoever and doesn't fit in at all. And then we sort of track those characters as they go through a bunch of different scenarios. And for me, that was I wanted to have a world wherein you had a lot of lies baked into things because that brings forth your questions of integrity and truth, and then that there would be a lot of conflicting loyalties within the world, and for that I was inspired by I was reading about the Borgia family in Renaissance Italy. And Renaissance Italy is pretty amazing because you would have like one person would have loyalties to like if you're a noble, you might have loyalty, of course, to your own family that you're born into. If you got married, especially if you're a woman, but even if you're a guy, you had a loyalty to your spouse's family. You had a loyalty to your birth city. You had a loyalty to the city that maybe you moved to when you got married. You were supposed to be loyal sometimes to all of Italy, depending on who you're fighting against, because it's a bunch of city-states, and then to all of Christendom. And then you were supposed to be loyal to the Pope, except the Pope was also a temporal power, so sometimes not, and to God. And any or all of those loyalties could be in conflict with each other at any one time. So I thought this idea of people having legitimate loyalties to things that could be in conflict with each other, because none of those loyalties are illegitimate. Those are all real things that have a reasonable call on a person. Really clarifies who the character is. Are you the kind of person who is loyal to the United States, or are you loyal to Virginia? Is a question, or is an iteration of that question that came forth in the U.S. Obviously in very, very different circumstances. But I wanted to examine some of those questions. So the world that I built was built in certain ways to bring out those questions in the characters, and then the characters had effects on that as they move through the social structures. So as you're writing, I don't think you have to have different writers are going to write differently. So some writers are going to want to sketch it all out first, and they'll feel paralyzed until they get it really, really written down well. And other writers will try to do that. I mean, I would like to do that because it seems a lot more efficient to me. But instead, what I do is I write down as much as I can, then I start writing the book. And then I realize, as I get to know these characters, it makes more sense that they turn left here rather than right. Maybe I need to change things. And then I'll stop and I'll fix things, and then I'll go forward, and then I'll stop and I'll fix things, and I'll go forward. And as I get going, and as I know the characters and as I know the world better, I'll get more and more efficient with this. But you can feel free to change those things at any point, of course. At any point up until book one is published, and then in book two, you're kind of nailed down to the decisions that you made in the first book. But until then, it doesn't matter. Nobody sees anything but the finished product. So there's not a right or wrong time to do that. There's just better or worse finished products. Okay, so that wow. Of course, I took 10 minutes on the first question. Thanks for being patient, guys. I had another question from another world building question from Maria Montando. Sorry about that. Brent, what kind of research did you do when you're developing the Color Magic Spectrum system in the Lightbringer series? I ended up doing a lot, but it's again, this is one of those things where you can really get paralyzed, and you can think like, I need to know everything before I get moving. I knew a decent amount of about light, the science of optics, and then even places where light gets really fuzzy, your quantum mechanics and this and that, and so I knew I wanted to tell about it. I knew that light is something that, or colors are certainly something that people think they understand really well, but is actually a little fuzzier than people think. So I knew I wanted to do this system, and then I sort of studied as I went along. I wanted to talk about perception, because I think I've always been really fascinated by questions about people's perceptions of things, and light and color gives me a really good way to talk about that, or to engage with those. Like, you have people who are colorblind, like what do things look like to them? If you're not colorblind, imagining that is actually fairly difficult. I mean, these days you can put an app on your phone and it'll be like, oh, this is what it looks like to be this kind of colorblind, this or this kind of colorblind. So there are just things you can play around with. I mean, you can read really. I ended up coming across a lot of different articles. I mean, some were kind of sciencey, or science light, where I've read some of these things now after reading a few of the scientific papers, and sometimes the stuff that's on the popular science websites are not that great. But things about tetrachromacy, how often that happens. Somebody like when people find out you're studying something, they also tend to help you. So I had a doctor friend of mine send me something. I asked when I went in for my eye checkup, because I wear glasses. I would ask my optician, really, really strange questions. I'd be like, so do you know of any degenerative diseases that a person could get that would affect their color receptors in their eyes? And she's like, whoa, this is always a strange client, because I always do this to her. So and then I even got another friend who I met through writing, sent me a declassified military brief on it's actually out there now, on this weapons platform that they were using, that beams millimeter wave radiation at you, which it'll only penetrate up to the depth of like a piece of paper, the width of a piece of paper, into your skin, and so supposedly doesn't give you cancer or anything. But it makes you feel like you're on fire. So you beam it at people who are riding. They feel like they're on fire, and guess what you do when you feel like you're on fire? You stop everything and you run away. So there's some ethical questions about when that's okay to use. So just sort of as I went, I collected all these ideas. I already knew from the start that I had too many things to use, and so I would pick and choose some of those things as I went along. And the research, to me, it's like, is it research to read things that you're interested in? I guess it is, and I guess it's research if you're trying to get things right, and so you study up on things more than maybe you normally would do. But it's not like magic. It's not like you have to do this for 10 years. It's not like you have to get a PhD in optics in order to learn cool stuff about it. You can just watch a bunch of YouTube videos and go, wow, I learned cool new stuff, and then figure out how it works into your fantasy world. So, oh yeah, and also saw some things about like the Enchroma lenses. They make these glasses that for people who have certain types of color blindness will help them actually see colors. And I actually considered buying some of those lenses to take on book tour with me, because I thought that would be cool. But then I also thought it'd sort of be like people when they wear those glasses the first time, they're often pretty emotional, because seeing colors is kind of a big deal when you haven't been able to. And so I thought it'd be kind of emotionally exploitative to be like, hey, cool, here, you want to look through these? Oh, look, there's 100 people in the room looking at you cry. So I ended up not doing that. But I thought it was cool stuff, and I wasn't able to ultimately use anything like the Enchroma lenses within my world building. It was just like the tech was way beyond the tech level of my world to do that, or the understanding of optics was way beyond what my people could use. But it was like, I kept on running across cool stuff like that. So I used as much as I could. Okay. On to the next question, which is from it's kind of a similar thing. This is from Gina Yip. How and when did you find the balance between just enough detail to be engaging and believable, and wow, that is too much information? Is this mostly beta readers and their feedback? A part of me really thought taking HEMA Longsword classes would be great for writing purposes, on top of being fun in itself. But where's the balance between entertaining and believable and boring? So I do not think that time taking longsword classes would be at all wasted. I think you would learn a ton, and I think if it is already something that's fun for you, that you think would be enjoyable for its own sake, I think that would be a great use of your time. This is, again, one of those things, like, to write a thing well, do I need to be a total expert on the thing? And the answer is you don't. Like actually at some point, if you took HEMA classes and you became a total expert, what you would end up having to do is you would have to remember how to translate your experience back into words that make sense for people who don't know anything. So in some ways you would learn a lot of things, but then you would also have to, like, dial it back down and be like, oh yeah, nobody knows what that term means who's not already in this field. So I need to dumb this down. So if say you only had 50 hours to learn about longsword fighting, let's say, I think these days a really efficient way you could spend your time would be, I would spend 10 hours actually fighting, going out and learning, like, where do you get sore? How do these things feel? What's surprising about this to me? And then I would watch 30 hours of commentary on YouTube about people talking about fighters, because then you have really educated people talking about fighting, especially the kind of HEMA stuff that you're talking about. Commentators who know what they're doing, who are talking about fighters who know what they're doing, and the commentators would already be translating it for you. Okay, well, what is this? Well, what are they trying to do here? Okay, can I slow this down? Can I watch this in slow motion and see what's actually happening? And then I would take your last 10 hours and I would go and I would spend another 10 hours fighting. And then you spent 50 hours and you've had a huge amount of practice and understanding of what's going on. Because what you're doing when you're writing a fight scene is you're not, what's most important is to remember that it's novels are not a visual medium. Like, there are things that you can do in a movie that you cannot do in writing. And like showing a really complicated maneuver using zero jargon, a movie can do. We just get to watch it. We see what the guy does. He does it well. He doesn't do it well. But you can tell what it is instantly. We can't do that in writing. We'd have to use jargon. Oh, this is what this is called in my 14th century Italian textbooks. You know, it's like, except they don't speak Italian in my fantasy world, so I had to come up with something else. And now it looks like I just am putting jargon that means absolutely nothing in here. Okay, so like there's things that are really difficult to translate. What you can do that visual media cannot do is you can talk about what it feels like to the character, what the character is feeling, what the character is thinking. And somebody just quoted Andrew. You just quoted, I think, from Princess Bride. Is that right, Andrew? And Princess Bride does this incredibly well. The fight scene on top of the cliff. You guys remember that with Diego Montoya, and like what. That scene is almost interesting if they weren't fighting, right? They're talking. They're actually talking way more than you would actually be talking if you were fighting, because you can't concentrate on those things. And there's ridiculous things they do in the middle of some things that apparently are sort of real things. But it's all about the interplay of the characters. and it's what they're thinking, and it's what they're doing, and it's how they're engaging with each other, and it's ridiculous things like switching to your left hand, which obviously would never really happen. like but it's just fun, and so I think, even though obviously The Princess Bride is a movie, and most of us probably have seen the movie, and probably a few of us have read the book, but I don't think it's a mistake that is a movie scene that still works really well, that was adapted from a book first, because William Golding, he was writing a book, and so he's engaging with it as through the art and what that art does well. Like to put it another way, and maybe I'm beating a dead horse here. Like I think of a chess match, and with a chess match, you can actually list out every move in a chess match, and somebody can just look at okay, queen to e6, bishop to b4, etc. And you can look at an entire match just in those letters and numbers, and you'll see the whole thing. Now, what does that mean to you? Now, if you're a super chess geek, you would probably look at that and be like, oh, that was fantastic. Oh, wow, that's so aggressive. But most of us can't do that. And if you were to write a chess match in a novel, what you'd want to know are the things that can't be captured by queen to e6. You're going to want to find out that Sergei had a conversation this morning with the commissar, and he told him, it's very important. We realize this man is better than you, and most people would want you to get a draw, but we really need to show these arrogant Americans that we're the best in the world. Okay, well, now Sergei, just by having a quick flashback to that, he knows what's on the table for him. There are stakes for him. So now you're going to characterize his playing as he's playing aggressively. He's playing recklessly because he can't play for the draw. So you can characterize those things. You can say what they mean to the character, what the stakes are for them, and why they're trying to do what they're trying to do, which I think is makes it a little more fun. So let's see. I thanks for hanging with me through fairly long answers there. I'm gonna take some of the live questions, and theoretically, and just shoot those off the cuff. Chris asks, "What's next in the world of Mikiru?" I'm not telling you. Sorry, I have something next in the world of Mikiru. That's what I'm working on right now, and I'm as hard as I try not to be starting the hype train, it seems like the hype train just wants to start. So I'm trying to not answer questions about that until I figure out when it's a good time for me to start answering questions about that, or start telling you guys about what's coming. So I'm really trying to just sort of lie fallow here, and then I'll come out when I have something wonderful to share with you. So that's what I'm hoping. Let's see. Another early bird. When you're at your most stressed writing the Lightbringer series, how did you manage to push through? Outside of books, what are your favorite sources of inspiration? Oh man, yeah. When I was at my most stressed writing the Lightbringer series, how did I manage to push through? I am not a good model for this. Holy smokes, I made really bad decisions for a while. Working kind of double shifts. Which means I'd get up whenever I got up in the morning. I'd work as long as I could. I'd do some stuff for my family, my kids, and then I'd start working again and work really late into the morning, and then I'd collapse, sleep late, not help out my family with any of the morning stuff, and then get back on it. I do not recommend doing that. Also, working 7 days a week eventually gets really counterproductive, at least the way I was doing it. You can kind of do it for especially if you're working super long hours. I could only do it for about 15 days in a row, and then I started to get really unproductive. So I think actually being a balanced human is a much better way to do things. Like in general human terms, it's like keeping the fun in it is important, and there's times when this is work and when you got to push through stuff that you don't want to do, or you got to push through stuff because there's a deadline and something needs to happen by then and other people are waiting on you. So there's job to this, but it's important that like I try to have fun so that you guys can have fun, and keeping my eye kind of on the finished product, like what do I want this to mean, how do I hope that this connects with readers, like those things I think are much healthier ways than of just like gritting your teeth and just trying to run through that brick wall over and over. Not every brick wall will yield when you do that. Some of us think we're juggernaut, and we are until we aren't. So I don't recommend it. Okay, let's see. Are there any ones with votes that I've abandoned so far? Do you prefer expansive world building to keeping your world localized? Oh, hey, wait, things just jumped around on my screen. Doggone it! Why did? I asked because I've been told my world building isn't expansive enough. Says W.A. Simpson. I don't think there's a rule. I don't think there's a hard and fast rule at all. I think I think that the way I did Night Angel was I started really small. All the action in the first book takes place, well, almost all the action takes place in one city. I felt like there were some really good things about keeping that focus tight. And then slowly, as the books went on, we pulled out. It became a national story in the second book and an international story in the third. I really like how that scale worked to expand the scope of the story. You can tell an absolutely wonderful story with characters who stay in a single house. So if readers are telling you your world building isn't expansive enough, I think what they're saying is they're saying I like bigger stories. And that's wonderful. People, maybe many people prefer bigger stories. It doesn't mean it's wrong to go small. You know what your story needs, and do it to the best of your ability. And that's great. Yeah, you do not need to go big in order to have a story with deep impact and high stakes. It does not need to involve a huge number of characters. Not everybody is George R. R. Martin, and not everybody should try to be. Tim, good question, but I'm going to skip that one for today. I feel like there was another question about COVID that got in early. So, there, Candace Huber. How are you being creative in the time of quarantines and COVID? Is it easy, difficult, or has nothing changed for you? Nothing. Yeah, nothing's changed for me. It's smooth sailing. Actually, it's a little bit of a delicate question, I guess, because I feel so fortunate in my occupation and just in where I live that like look, I am able to do my job remotely. I am used to working all by myself for long periods of time and just getting it done. So in some ways I've been, so much less effective. I mean, I still have a job, and a lot of people don't have that. So I've been so much less affected by COVID than so many people. That said, I also think that I think that creative people, or at least a lot of creative people, are also highly sensitive people. So when people are around you are in distress, or when your country is in distress, when people are dying, like that's going to affect you, because that's your personality type is like, I care about people. I'm looking around at people and people are suffering, and if that doesn't affect you, then you're probably not a highly sensitive person. And there are writers who are not, and that's fine. But I think a lot of writers are. So there's that. So, and definitely my own family situation. I've had to pick up some slack, and I've with schooling and stuff with my kids. There are some chunks taken out of my time that have slowed me a little bit. And on the other hand, I think if you look at there's a little bit of a bias in the selection here. Like if you look at any writer or any artist who's been putting out work consistently for at least a decade, it's like that person has probably gone through something, or they've had family that has had, you know, cancer, or they've gone through a divorce, or they've you know, a parent has died, or you know, if somebody has worked consistently and is still putting out work, they've done it for any period of time, they've probably gone through some crap and figured out how to keep writing or how to keep creating. So this is another and significant disruption to life. But to me, it's like creating art is it's not really what I do. It's how I live. It's how I react to life. It is like things happen and I have feelings about them, and I don't want to post those on a blog. I want to examine them. I want to take apart thorny questions. I want to see characters who interact with their world and who are bothered by things and who care. So I use my art to you know, and for me, it's like, it's usually, and this is just me, it's usually boring for me to do a one-to-one. Like you're not going to see a pandemic in my next book. It's just a little too on the nose, and we're probably going to see a lot of it. So to me, and like, I don't know exactly how these stresses will come through, or even if they do come through, for sure. But I think they do. I think they do. But it won't be in some patently obvious place or in some patently obvious way. For me, that stuff all goes into the hamper, or into the hopper. Sorry. Of creation, and it's like, okay, how do people act when you put them under terrible stress? This is one kind of terrible stress, and we've seen some ways people act. Okay, well, that's interesting. I can put that in there, and I can think about that, and that might come out, you know, some later time. So yeah, that's my answer on COVID. It's had an impact for me personally. It hasn't had enormous slowdowns, but it definitely has slowed me down. I'm trying to work through that and use my creation, use my writing as a refuge. I get to go and live in the world inside my head for hours a day, and that's pretty awesome. And when the world stinks, as sometimes it has, you know, then that's a wonderful outlet to be able to have. So I'm really delighted to have such privileges. So okay, I think, oh man, it's been 33 minutes. I've taken a few live questions. Let's see, is there one more live question that I can hit? Okay, this one is an early bird question that got in. Has anyone in your life inspired a character? I'm not really a person who does one-to-one recreations of people that I've known. I sometimes do things with people who have extraordinary traits. I go, so I talked to a female college coach that I know, who happens to be a friend of mine. And I talked with her about what it's like for women to be elite athletes, to be athletes, and how they think, how they feel, and I just had a long conversation with her. So she was able to really help me with direct experience, but I don't. So I have characters who react in some of the ways that she talked about within my worlds, but it's like I didn't take her and put her into my book. I have other characters. I've known other people who are like extraordinarily charismatic, and I sit there and I go, wow, how does that work? Why does everyone want to be your friend? You know, like what's the deal? One, I'd just like to be that guy. That would be cool. And two, like, okay, if I'm going to write a charismatic character, I want to figure out what it is about you that makes people react to you that way and makes people want to be like, yeah, I'd go, you know, if you told me to go charge up that hill and I'd probably die taking it, I'll do it. You know, like, well, that seems insane. But obviously, you know, people have done that throughout history. So I sort of take the character traits of people that I find fascinating, historical characters as well. I love reading up on extreme kind of personality types, or you know, great men. great men and women, people who do amazing things. So, okay, I think that's okay. I'm gonna leave it there. If you guys have other questions for me, please do leave them as you saw today. I'm happy to queue up those questions next time and answer some of those at the beginning. Next time I'll try to take more live questions because I know I went quite long on the previous questions this time. And next time I think I'll try to be a little more focused on I'll have some kind of theme. So if you guys have ideas for what kind of theme you'd love me to talk about, I'm here to be helpful for you. I'm not particularly trying to sell you anything right now. I'm just doing these things because apparently people like it, and I like to be a help. So thanks so much for coming and visiting me again, and I hope you have a great afternoon, evening, or wherever you are. Take care.